always hits, man. Always, always, always hits. That's why it's so good. Yeah, what is that? Hey! Okay, so I have a build here that isn't meta, at least not yet, and doesn't have doesn't require you to be a crazy skillful pilot. Like I'm just your average AC6 player, and this build has got me all the way through A rank, and I'm on my way to S rank with this. And again, I'm just a normal, like casual player. Um, I don't think it's cheap. It's not. It's not overly cheap. You still have to aim with it, but you can use it in a variety amount of ways, and you can still also take it on missions. It's really good for PvE stuff. But I primarily use it for ranked play, for PvP, and it's something that I haven't seen many people use this combination, so I'm just gonna go through it. So, um, first, like obviously the weapons we're gonna use uh, dual VVC 760 PRs. Um, these these are the lesser known plasma rifles. Everyone uses the Nebula for its charged attack, but I love these ones because they're light. They're lighter. They have a better EN load. Their normal attack does way more damage, and they have a way better blast radius. So I use it to poke. I have two of them, and what happens is I charge one on one hand, and then I poke with the other. So I use the normal attack on the other and charge one, and then the good thing about the charge attack for these guys is that they just always hit because it's a scattered shot. It's kind of like it's just three beams at once, and it's a really it covers a wide range of area. So that's kind of why I use it. It's super good for missions like that. Just takes out drones in groups, and then for PvP, that charge shot just always hits. So you're never worried about missing. The only way you miss is if your FCS kind of messes up or they dodge just at the right second in the opposite direction. Um, and again, they can still dodge back and come into the area of effect. So I love plasma weapons, but this is honestly my favorite gun in the game, and I think it's just not as known, and I've had so much success with it, especially in ranked. So we're going with dual plasma rifles here, and then we're using this is a complete energy build. So we're using the energy missiles, because I'm using also the 20B generator, which is the maximum, what has maximum energy firearm spec. So we're using that, and so we have to use energy weapons, and I'm using the energy missiles. They're standard. I've seen them used a lot. They're kind of meta. Um, honestly, the main attraction here is the dual plasma rifles. So for this build, it's primarily was meant to kind of counter the meta, which is currently using dual stun guns or needle guns, sorry, or dual stun guns, with like light builds, and these guys will just strafe around you with like super light legs and just stun you until you lose all your health, or needle you until you get instant stagger like as soon as the match starts. It's just not fair. So the way I built this is, whoops, the way I built this is I built it around stagger, like countering stagger. So um, if you increase your attitude stability, it takes longer to stagger you, of course. But the other thing too is if you're using pulse armor, you can actually time your pulse armor much better than if you had a lower attitude stability. So you need at least, you don't have to use, obviously you don't have to use this build, but like whatever build you do, if you want to counter stun guns and needle guns, you need a attitude stability of at least 1600. So I've got 1676. There are a multitude of ways to kind of get to that number. What that'll do is that'll take longer for you to get staggered, but that'll also allow you to, it'll give you a much bigger window to activate your pulse armor when you're almost there and they're almost ready to stagger you, and you just activate pulse armor and then gets the whole thing. It's very, very deflating for someone who's trying to do that. So you want to be able to do that constantly, and once you do that, you're kind of free to go, and they have lower health. And again, because you're using plasma rifles and not laser rifles, they've got a wide range of, they do damage over an area, so like it's really hard to dodge. Even though the projectile is really slow, it's really hard to dodge, and you'll see in the gameplay if you have a good FCS and good arms. And so the head I'm using is honestly just for attitude stability and system recovery. So if if I do get staggered, I can get out of it quickly. You can use whatever head you want. The core, this is kind of the main attraction here. I've got really high attitude stability, lots of AP, and my generator output adjustment is really high. You can't really use many cores. You can only use like 3 or 4 cores with the generator that you're using. So like none of these guys would work. There's only like 3 of them would work. So other than that, we're okay. And once you have that, I'm using this core just because it's just tankier. I've got 11,000 AP, and that also helps a lot. Kind of just outlasting your opponents, which in the meta right now are just these rush down needle guns or dual stun gun users, and they're really annoying. I always use reverse joints legs, just because I love to get higher than my opponent. I think if you're higher, especially if you're using a weapon with a blast radius, that it's advantageous to get higher than your opponent, to kind of shoot at the ground. Even if you miss, they'll still get within the blast radius and damage them. So I'm always using reverse joints. I've got the medium size, the mine beta. For the booster, you can do whatever you want. Again, like this build, it's limited. Like you can't use very many because of the generator we're using. But I'm using the PO4. It's pretty balanced and allows you to get out of situations pretty quickly. I used to have the grid walkers, but with this kind of weight, the grid walkers really stall, and they kind of just don't have a good reload time for quick boost when you have a higher weight than this. So you can do one really good quick boost and then you have to wait a whole second and a half. It's kind of annoying. So I'm going with the PO4s. FCS. So this build kind of concentrates on medium range, so medium to close range. And you can pepper people with far range with your missiles, but I like to chase people down a little bit, not get in their face, but kind of keep a little bit of distance. And so I have the one with maxed out medium range assist, and then on top of that, I'm using the arms that have the maxed out firearm specialization. So it's all about aiming and getting your shots right, because this weapon does have a really slow fire rate, so you want to make sure your shots count. And then obviously I already talked about the generator, and then I'm using pulse armor. So pulse armor is really important for this build, for any kind of build that you want to counter meta builds that are trying to get your stagger up. And it's because you want to be able to time your pulse armor right before you get ACS overload. So you can kind of like, you want to ride out their attacks as much as possible and then hit pulse armor. If you hit pulse armor too early, you kind of waste it, and they're just gonna wait for you to cool down again. But if you're in the fight and you're kind of trading shots with them, and then you pay attention to your um, ACS, like, and then hit it right at the last spot, then they're kind of screwed because now they have to attack and wait for you to get your shield down. Um, a lot of these guys will have terminal armor, which is kind of this guy's weakness. Like if they play you right, like terminal armor will kind of just always win. But if you time your pulse armor right, then they'll just lose all their health immediately. So that's kind of this build. I call it Surge just because of the pure energy, the kind of pure energy build that I have here. Again, nothing really that special about this build. It's not really that meta because of the weapons, but I really think people need to start paying attention to the first plasma rifle, because I've used it ever since Balteus in PvE, and I've never stopped using it. Like this thing is just amazing in so many different ways. You don't have to use its charge shot. I do to make sure that I get a lot of stagger and that it always hits. So you don't have to use it. You can just poke people. You can kind of stagger your shots. You can kind of dual shot you can kind of dual wield your normal shot, so that you get two plasma beams going out at the same time. It's really, really good, and it depletes enemies' health really, really fast before they even know it. And another really quick thing to know about this, about any kind of plasma weapon, is that if your opponent starts their pulse armor while they're in the area of effect, while they're in the blast radius for this thing, they're still gonna take damage, even when their pulse armor is on, as long as they're in the area of effect and that they were in the blast radius before they started pulse armor. So it's actually I've actually gotten quite a lot of guys just dying right when they hit pulse armor because they think they think they're smart, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna activate pulse armor at like 1 HP, and then it's too late. So that's the build. Now over to, like you see, I probably front loaded this video with gameplay, but yeah, at the time of this video, this build isn't really meta, and I have a feeling it might be later on. So thanks.